Hi everyone, thanks for joining us this evening. We're here chatting to Scotty Laughland about his adventures around the world with his bike. So cheers for joining us, Scotty. So you've gone from being like a professional mountain biker to now a different kind of professional mountain biker, behind the camera, in front of the camera, going all over the world, and you've made it your mission to ride the best trails in the world. So yeah, cheers for coming and sharing your latest video with us.
Yes, this is kind of like a work in progress as well. There's going to be like a really long version of it. This is a shortened one that's like 3 minutes 20, and the guy who we had with us, Miles Mallinson from Fort William, came to Jamaica with us, and this is sort of his take on it, and then we're going to have my take on it, which is going to be sort of like a 20-minute monster sort of vlog kind of thing, of like really going into the details of all the places that we went, the crazy destinations that we stayed in Jamaica, and sort of a bit of the culture behind the scenes. And yeah, it was a really epic trip, and lucky to have squeezed it in right before lockdowns obviously happened, because yeah, don't know, that might be the only big international trip of the year.
It's good, but yeah, you got one video out of it at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the end of the world, you know. Scotland, we're pretty lucky, and there's still a lot of parts that I'd like to explore. A lot of the islands further up north I've not been.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I mean, worse things could happen, that we can't travel, and we have to just take on board what's around at home.
Yeah, definitely. You're a great advocate for Scotland. And if anybody wants to follow Scotty's adventures at home, you can follow his Komoot profile. It's been linked in a couple of the communications. And of course, you're a Komoot ambassador. That's why you're here. And also we've had a bit of support with Mountain Biking UK for this session. So cheers, guys. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. amazing.
So yeah, there we go. That's like a real snippet of like what a week in, well, it was actually 9 days we're in Jamaica was like a huge variation of trails. Most of them ended up at the beach, which was just so nice. You go for a swim, or you could get a drink after, and quite a few of them actually had fresh coconuts for sale, which was a perfect like end of ride drink. And we became really a bit too accustomed to it. We went to one beach one day where they weren't available, and yeah, it was a bit of a bummer almost.
Was it just as much about the culture then as it was about the riding and the trails?
Yeah, definitely culture. There was a lot of partying on offer if you wanted to. Really, I'd say that it was part of the Fat Tyre Festival that Single Track Jamaica organised, and I'd say it was probably as much to do with partying as it was the riding. So, which was fun, like we were there more kind of riding biased, I guess, and there was one morning that everyone else went out and we didn't go out, and we got up at the crack of dawn to get quite a few of those shots in that video. So the predominant section of one trail, it was this beautiful ridgeline looking out onto the ocean, and had some really nice turns and switchbacks. And we went up there early. We were up there at 6 a.m, and we just managed to catch the sunrise and no more. And the clouds blew out, the ocean opened up, and we got this beautiful like green where we were versus like a contrasty blue down by the ocean and the sky. So it was a really nice morning, and definitely worth getting up at 6.
It's always worth getting up for the sunrise. I'm just going to stop the screen share so that we can see your face. Hopefully this won't break anything.
Nice. Spur it off, get the elephant in there.
So we've got an awesome question from Manu. She says, cool video, makes me want to go there. How big is the local scene in Jamaica, and are they open to showing non-locals the best rides?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were really open. Like we were there with Single Track Jamaica. They kind of put on the festival, organized everything. They do guiding and stuff. And the good thing about having the guides was it really took you in depth the culture, because finding like the unique little spots and like tiny little hidden gems of knowing that you could go to that bar or you couldn't go to that bar was like a massive help. Otherwise, kind of you did feel a little bit of minority there. And the first day, Miles and myself were walking around, and we definitely felt like a little bit out of our depth and out of our comfort zone being there. But once we got to know where you could go and how to sort of interact with the locals, it was definitely a lot easier, and you became a bit more comfortable. But we weren't there for any of the like glitzy resorts and beaches and stuff like that. It was quite a rustic experience, and in that way it felt like we got a really good look at what the lifestyle was like there.
Yeah, like a proper authentic experience rather than just the like fancy resorts and hotels. And
yeah, and like the locals who rode were just so fired up and so stoked on riding. They absolutely loved it. No one had any like modern bikes or anything. The 3 guides that were on the trip, I think all of them still had 26-inch wheels, and they were absolute ripping on them. Just
yeah,
they didn't care about any of like the latest gear. They were just having a blast on bikes, and that was like it was really nice to see. And we were filming, and occasionally they would do double laps on a trail whilst we would do one, and you just hear them even before you saw them, just like laughing and screaming and joking down the trails.
Did you lend them your bikes to see what they thought?
No, I don't think they were like, I mean, they had a show in the car park or whatever, but yeah, they weren't bothered or interested in them, and they were just happy with kind of what they had, and they were building new bikes and changing bits in and out, and everyone kind of left them something, whether it was like bike parts or spares or kit or something. Everyone kind of left them something, so they, and I'm sure that's the same quite regularly on trips that they host and show people around.
So you've now, like, you're making a living out of like traveling around the world and making these really inspiring films. What kind of gear do you take with you when you're going on these trips?
I think a lot of people know that I use a lot of GoPro stuff. GoPro for me is like perfect for like capturing point of view, like helmet camera shots, and like it really gets like a good sense of stuff. But at the same time, I'll have like a little mini drone with me that I can carry in my backpack, and then also like a proper camera. I just got this year, I upgraded to a Sony A7 and a bunch of their G Master lenses, and that's been really cool. I've been loving taking photos, especially on it. I had a GH5 before that, and that's awesome for video, but now having the Sony is really good for photos and for video. And I've learned a lot, spent a lot of time learning sort of new skills. And before, this is my third year doing it. Before that, I'd never touched a camera in my life before, and it's kind of been a big learning curve. And it's been really fun. It's like a new challenge, and like I try to look at things differently, and like having learned techniques, I'll like always try and think about how I'm going to shoot something or tell a story or get a shot, or if you can do it differently, or how you can portray that.
Yeah, that's very cool. I didn't realize it so recently that you kind of taught yourself everything.
Yeah, it's like when I did my first ever YouTube video, I'd literally never touched a camera in my life apart from like the month in the lead up to when I was playing and filming and learning how to do stuff. Like it was a huge learning curve. I really had no idea what to do and just kind of threw myself in at the deep end, watching YouTube tutorials. Like, whereas probably a lot of people who follow me watch bike tutorials or want to learn how I do it, I was like watching like vice versa, and it was almost inspiring in its own way, because I saw how they were filming their tutorials or how they were filming trips, and I wanted to take that into what people were doing with mountain biking. And that's kind of where the idea that where I am now kind of developed from.
That's amazing.
It's been a really cool journey and lots of fun learning along the way.
And what would you, if somebody wants to start, not necessarily like making like full films, but if they just wanted to start like taking better pictures or better films of themselves and their friends riding, like where would you suggest that they start?
Well, I think now like phones are such a great way of like capturing what you're doing like in a really quick way. And like I know that a lot of video guys still use phones, like they'll just grab a quick shot, like it might be there and then. By the time you've got a camera out and set up a mic, it takes quite a lot of time. Whereas with a GoPro or like a mobile phone, just pull it out, basically hit record, and it's so easy, and you've got it in your pocket. So it's like the perfect tool to almost capture. And then I'd say just learning how to almost edit stuff to put it together and tell the stories and is the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just build from there. So yeah, it's pretty hard. I mean, I guess the first thing you've got to do is just enjoy like telling stories or filming or whatever. Mm. That's kind of the starting point. And for me, I still enjoy it, and I still, every time I'm learning or every time that I've got all the shots and then start editing, I think, I wish we'd like captured this shot or got this or whatever. And like that's like still fun, because I don't think there's any point that I'm thinking, I've got this really dialed or anything. Every single time I'm learning something new, and like the edits at the start were probably a bit more rough, and now I spend more time like perfecting them, and probably people don't even notice those tiny little details, but to me they make a big difference.
Yeah. We've got a great question here about from Geese. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. So what's it like when you're there filming, doing the shots? I mean, it looks amazing when it's put together like that. It just looks like you're it feels like you're riding with you, descending right from the top down to the beach. And especially when you hear the sounds of the dirt and you see it like flinging across the camera, you feel like you're fully immersed. But what's it like when you're there? Are you just constantly like stopping, running back up the trail?
It kind of depends. Like the real cool shots in the movie that you just saw, we probably spent almost 2 hours, I'd say, at that one little zone, getting loads of different shots from different angles to connect it all up. And then we'd wait for the sun to be good or the sun to be in the right spot. And that's really what took so long to get those shots. But then in other cases, like we just ride down the trail until we find something that we really like. And I'll generally always have a GoPro on recording that section of trails. So, you know, that's a really good way of linking from like one scene to another where you might be riding in the open, but then you ride with the GoPro on from the open section into the trees. And that's like a cool way of sort of tying those two shots together. But try and enjoy the riding as much as we can, because otherwise you're not really sort of sharing the experience in the best possible way. And Jamaica was nice because we actually did get to do a lot of riding. It was like, although like getting media and shots and stuff was really focused when we were there, actually riding was like almost like as much, and that was nice. Like we rode some really fun stuff, and the trails were, I mean, I had no expectations, I guess, going to Jamaica, and all my expectations were like surpassed of what the trails would be like. And there was a couple of trails that we rode that were just sort of like, we all came down to the bottom and I was like, man, that was so much fun. That was so, like, the dirt was just like perfect. And like, yeah, it was still like it was an awesome trip. Like some of the best trails I've probably ridden.
I had no idea it was such a like bucket list destination to go riding.
Yeah, I think it's like quite quiet almost. Like you have to be in the know, I think, to know how
That's
big
the best places though.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, yeah, they'd be pretty hard to know that stuff was there. And I just stumbled across them on Instagram, actually, the company called Single Track Jamaica, and I was like, it looks so cool there, guys. Like, didn't really know anything about like the Caribbean, had never been before. And yeah, they were like, okay, we need to get you out here and like do a story and stuff. So yeah, it's cool. But there's been quite a few big riders that have been out there and have told stories or made films or whatever. But yeah, it is like I guess still a low key destination. It's not like Whistler or Morzine or something like that. You know, it's like for mountain biking, it is pretty low key.
Perfect if you like mountain biking and the beach.
Yeah, exactly. And the good thing was that you'd normally ride like early in the morning, like you'd be up on the trails by 9, and then you'd be kind of done by like 1 or 2, and you just have the afternoon to sort of chill at the beach. Or so it was good. And we had like really nice weather. Like it'd been kind of a long start to the year in Scotland, I'd say. Like January was quite wet and cold, and then you go to Jamaica and it's like 26 to 32 degrees, and you're like super hot.
Shock to the system.
Yeah, complete shock to the system.
You're like, my trench foot can't handle this.
I was just like, wow. Like a few of the shots were like pushing up and down, and we ran out of water, ran out of snacks. Just didn't in any way plan to be out that long or expect it to be that hot. And we missed breakfast in the morning as well. And like we're all like, okay, we're all starting to struggle, and we're like, right, we just have to call it. We have to call it with what we've got. And there's a couple of final like closing shots that we wanted to get, and they were just like on the limit the whole time, just being like, right, struggling. And then we had it was like maybe a 40-minute ride, like it was quite undulating and had some really quite steep climbs, and that just finished the 3 of us. And when we got back, we were just dead and just ready to eat, and we absolutely had a massive lunch. We had a lot of chicken rice that trip. Yeah. That was kind of like the staple of lunch and dinner. So
did you bring any spices back to kind of like start sort of jerking up your food at home?
No, not really, actually. No, I didn't really bring that much back. I was gonna get some, and then we kind of ran out of time. But we went to, on the very first night, we rode to this, probably the best chicken I've ever had in my life. It was like the very start of the movie, like they were cooking it underneath bamboo.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bamboo, sorry, I can't remember the wood, but they'd use fresh wood every day that the meat would go on. And then the previous night's meat they would cut up and they'd actually use that to burn. So it was like doubling the flavor almost. And it was just so amazing and like really juicy. And it was so good. Oh. It was some of the best chicken I think I've ever had.
It sounds like a culinary riding culture beach destination.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience. And it was like, there was people on the trip as well who were like full customers, and they were like returning from like multiple years, and I think that it's been going on since 1992 or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was some that had been there from every trip apart from one, I think it was. Just absolutely loved it. So
sweet. We've got another film to show. I thought we could maybe show the Norway one next, just as like a bit of a contrast. So you mentioned that with Jamaica, you were there with Single Track Jamaica, and it was all a guided trip. So Norway was a little bit different. Do you want to introduce the film with a couple of sentences?
Yeah, Norway was like completely unplanned. I went to university with a guy called Steve, who I now call Sender Steve, because he started mountain biking about 3 years ago. And he used to play ice hockey, and he used to be the guy in the ice hockey field who would initiate the fights. So he's like, he's built, he's a big guy, you know, he's super strong. And he moved there to work in oil and gas, because for those that don't know, I have a mechanical engineering background. And he was like, hey man, you've got to come over, So I booked a one-way ticket. The plan was to spend like just a long weekend there. And then he took extra time off work, so I extended my trip, and we spent a full week. We started off by just going to some trails around Oslo, and then sort of headed further north into fjords with basically no plan, no idea where to go. And kind of like used a bit of word of mouth, used recommendations of trails that we should, like areas that we should go and ride, or what might be really rideable is probably the best way of describing it. And we really had no idea what to go with, and we discovered some insane single track. It was sort of big hiking paths, and yeah, had a really good time with that. And I think the little clip is like a minute long, kind of displays just how much fun we had.
Well, welcome to Norway. Oh, it is raining, and when it comes down, it comes down. Oh. We've got some traffic here on the road in Norway. Could you move over? Almost there.
Yeah, so that was Norway in a minute. That was like 6 days of riding. We spent a couple of days in the bike park, which like didn't include in the film. But that was kind of like all the more rustic stuff. Once we left, what I'd almost say is not civilization. It was definitely like we went away from anything big. There was no major cities or anything like that. Didn't really have Wi-Fi. Didn't really have signal or anything. And yeah, it was super fun. It was like a really good trip where we just kind of went with it. We didn't know what to expect, and the whole time I'd be looking at Komoot, trying to work out, can we get to that mountaintop? Can we not? And we got tipped off in the last little sort of 20 seconds of that video. We got tipped off about this mountain, and I mapped out on Komoot, and it turned out to be just this like absolutely epic, and it's like one of the best days I've had on a bike, just because it was super fun and really different. And we hiked from like sea level up to the glacier. We saw like the glacier, like where it retracted from, where it'd been in the past, and it was like this tiny little single track path that was really narrow the whole way up, like carrying bike. We got to these huts. First hut we got to was fine. We could have pedaled up to there. Second one, we had to kind of carry the bike on our shoulders up to. It was way colder up there. The snow line was just above us, and then we got to the snow line. And I was like, we should go a little bit further. And like, get to a certain point, and Steve would be like, yeah, man, it's pretty good. It's pretty good here. We should be happy with this. And then keep going, wanting to go like a little bit further. And we eventually got right up to the snow line where we couldn't go any further. We found this really nice little glacial lake, and it was just it was stunning. It was like one of those things that the planning it would have been so different, but because we just stumbled across it and found this like really unique ride, and like it was just really, really good. And like we had again no expectations, and that was like what made it so special, was that the expectations we had were so surpassed, and just loved it. And the whole way up, and like Steve, and like, right, we're off the dirt track, we've got like say 5k to go, and then we'll be like, we've been going like half an hour and we've done a k, and we'll be like scrambling through rubble, and we're like on the way up, we're like, no, we're not gonna be able to ride half of this on the way down. And then we rode pretty much most of it, had like a few hairy moments where we were literally riding like almost cliff top stuff, and like if either of us had come off, then we'd have been in serious trouble, but we were lucky that we didn't. And yeah, it was such a fun ride, and it was like a really good way of using Komoot kind of to actually learn where you're going, to know how hard the terrain was going to be. And you could have gone further as well, but the snow line was still there, and it'd be cool to go back again. We had planned to go back this summer and sort of discover more, but obviously we'll see what happens with travel. But it was just such a fun trip, and again, so unexpected.
Yeah, sometimes those are the best rides, and you spend a little bit of time like looking at a map, like maybe you'll chance like a conversation in a pub or something, or just like passing someone and they say, oh yeah, da, 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 and you've got no idea, and you kind of just, it feels like proper exploring. And then even when you are like carrying your bike up, or you're like, oh my gosh, it's taken us like 5 hours to go not very far, like it feels like you feel like you're exploring, you feel like you're the first person there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw no one, we didn't see anyone up there at all. There is no one going up or down or anything. It was just like we were the only people on the mountain, and there was huts, and the huts had their own little books in them that you could go in and like you could write a memoir in or whatever. And it dated back like almost 40 years, I think, in the book. And it was cool just being up there and actually like discovering it and making our own story and having our own adventure. And yeah, it was really good. And I think that there's probably just so much of that in Norway, so much of it that is to be explored and discovered still.
Yeah,
so,
kind of like Scotland on steroids.
Yeah, steeper. I'd probably say gnarlier, and yeah, definitely no civilization really. So
yeah. We've got a question here that I really like. So it's saying that everywhere is someone's home trail, even the most epic of locations. So yeah, there's probably some like mountain goat in Norway who's like, oh look, they're exploring my back garden. Do you think that you have got any home trails or places that you've ridden in Scotland that are comparable or maybe better than some of the most epic locations that you've ridden in around the world?
Oh, that's a pretty hard question.
I know, that's why I asked it. I like that one, whoever asked that.
Do you know what I think about it that's cool is that every time I travel somewhere, I take like a little bit of like learning from each destination and then apply it to my like home trails or like how I'd ride a trail at home. And whilst I probably don't think my trails are definitely world class that I ride at home every day. Like we have a 400 meter drop if you start at the very top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom. But I just love coming home after a trip and like you see something a little bit different, or you think about a line slightly different to what you've ever ridden before. And that's what makes like my trails so special. And like I've ridden them for almost, well, I guess really properly, like probably 16 years. And I just don't get bored of them. Like they change, like the weather changes so easily in Scotland for one. Like you can have like dry bone dusty trails one day to like wet muddy trails the next, and there's like two different riding styles right there straight away. So I don't think anything is ever exactly the same. It's always kind of changing, and like that's what keeps, or that's what at least makes mountain biking for me really fun, is like the constant learning curve. Like you can ride one trail one day, then the next day it can be completely different, and yeah, it's just so good. So I do think there's like world-class stuff, and probably the nearest place I'd go and ride the most is a spot called Dunkeld. There's loads of rides on my Komoot profile there that all incur going to the bakery that's there, which is kind of one of the main reasons that I go, because like we'll meet there, we'll have coffee, have a cake, and then halfway through the day we'll go for another coffee and cake, and then to the other side of the hill. But I mean, anyone who I've ever taken there has absolutely loved it, and the trails are all hand cut and they're just really fun. The dirt's good. It's got its own little microclimate as well. So generally, wherever it's wet, it's always a little drier. And yeah, so I do think that there's stuff in Scotland that's world class. And then you have the whole like Tweed Valley area where, you know, they've had the Enduro World Series in the past, and yeah, so there's loads of stuff in Scotland.
I've noticed you've been riding your gravel bike a lot in lockdown. I guess you're like one of those riders that you kind of ride everything, like downhill, cross country, bit of gravel. Do you find that in the same way that you learn something new from riding in all these different places, do you also learn like different, like from riding different styles, different bikes? Do you find that like does your downhill benefit from riding a gravel bike other than just the arm pump?
Yeah, I mean, the gravel bike's the newest one to me. Like, and I rode a lot of road when I was racing WS, and I don't know, I wouldn't say that I particularly enjoyed it. It was always like I enjoyed it after it was done. It was like type 2 fun. Whereas the gravel bike's like really fun because I've been discovering loads of new places close to home, like roads that I wouldn't normally have gone on before, or like little tracks that are kind of leading you to different places. And I've done a couple of gravel rides that I normally do on a mountain bike. And I have to say that descending on a gravel bike, there's something pretty special about it, because those like little 38C tires have got a huge amount of grip, but at the same time, you don't know if they're going to grip, and you're on this constant like teetering edge of like, are they going to grip? Are they not? They're gripping. They're gripping. They're gripping. Go, 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 go. And it's just like, it's like such a different riding style, like, that I guess it has a lot of similarities to downhill, where you're constantly on the edge, but at the same time on a gravel bike, it's like going back to when mountain biking, I'm sure, was in the 90s. You know, like it was just like smashing down big open paths, whereas now it's totally evolved to this whole different scene. But I think gravel biking's like taking it back, and there's so many people who are loving it at the moment. So yeah, I don't know, it's good fun, and it's definitely been good for lockdown, because riding to the trails is quite a trek, and it's not that, don't really enjoy just riding on the road, whereas like gravel bike takes you all sorts of different places and can link things up. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm definitely now missing mountain biking big time.
Do you feel that like your mood will influence what kind of riding you go out to do one day?
Yeah, definitely. Probably just tend to now ride majority trail stuff. Like we'll go for like sort of a solid loop would sort of be like 30k with 1200 meters of climbing, and it'd probably be like 4 or 5 really good descents, and that would be like, that is exactly what I just love doing, is just going out for a ride and, you know, having fun, like nailing a few good turns, finding a little flow trail, something like that, and that's just like keeps me really happy. And just dying to go and do that right now. Looking forward, like, to see like friends in Canada or places where you are allowed to ride now. And I'm like, oh, this looks so good. And I've been working on like a whole pile of GoPro clips I sort of captured last year, but didn't really do very much with. And it's just brought back so much hunger to go out riding, and just absolutely dying to go out on the bike again and sort of explore new places and go further up north and do some big mountain adventures.
Yeah, I guess it's a good opportunity to explore more. Like, you're such a good advocate for like Scottish mountain biking and Scotland as a destination for mountain biking.
Well, yeah, there's just so much here, and there's like so much more that I'm like discovering, and I think really take it for granted what we have here. I I guess what we don't have though is like the big open vast forests that like you see a lot of the Canadian riders have, where they can sort of, you know, almost roam free and they can go and build like really different style trails. And that's like something that I definitely really, really love, is like the Canadian American style of building. But I think that we have sort of more terrain that's sort of more challenging, and like you can feel like quite quickly, you can get quite out of your depth and feel like you're really, really lost, like up in Torridon sort of area. That's a really good spot as well. And I want to go and explore way more up there. I've sort of done 2 or 3 big rides, but I have a couple more sort of like that I've been thinking about for a while, and sort of take off a few Monroes as well, which I think will be really fun.
Do you have one of those little backpacks for carrying your bike on your back?
Not yet, but after a few trips last year, I probably don't think that there would be a bad idea. Because it gets pretty tiring in the old shoulders, having like a crank over your arm, and like your arms like right behind you all the time. It becomes pretty draining pretty quick. I've not invested in that yet.
They look pretty cool, pretty useful. So maybe now we'll show the last film that we've got.
Yeah, the last one's from a trip last October to Nepal, and it's following one of the guides that we have there, a guy called R.G. Ripper, who's he's really famous in his own area. He's like an inspiring EWS athlete, and he'd ridden this trail loads, and this was the first time that I'd ever been down it, and he was just buzzing to have me behind him, and he was pinning, and I was like mad at like down this little goat trail that's like almost this wide, like just no more than really a set of tires, and we were just absolutely hooning, and I was just trusting that he knew where to go, because I could barely see anything between dust and him in front of me, and just the view in front is just, yeah, it was really cool. Wow. And that was a really cool trip. Like proper, real big mountain terrain, like really, like, yeah, I don't even know how to describe it, because I've never ridden anything really quite like it. Like, just felt like I was on the limit of the bike. Like, you could feel everything was like getting speed wobbles, like you'd feel the wind hitting your face, and it was just like, it was a really, really cool experience. And then you just got like vast mountains around you. Like, I think we're riding underneath, like, I think it was the 7th or the 8th biggest mountain in the world. And it just seeing that like on the horizon, and it's like covered in snow was so cool. So that was definitely like a really unique trip, and one to have like ticked off the bucket list. And probably the scariest part of the whole trip was a plane journey there. We, like, all the girls who were on the trip were like screaming in the background, and it was like the plane went really close, like veering next to the edge, and then last minute just kind of like darted back around to go and land. And I think it's one of the most dangerous airports in the world, and you can definitely understand why. We're super lucky to get the flight out like the morning we went out onto the plane. The plane didn't take off for, I can't remember what the reason was, but they kept like putting off and off, and we're like, oh my god, it'd been a 10 or a 12-hour drive up to the point where we were staying, but we got the plane in the end, and it was absolutely stunning. Just like the whole flight there was so cool. So
did you spend any time acclimatizing for the altitude? Yeah,
so we started off in Kathmandu, which I think is about 1,500 meters, and then the highest that we went to was 4,500 meters. We spent, I'm trying to think, a couple of days in Kathmandu, then went up to 2,200 meters for another couple of days, did a couple of days riding, and then that was kind of our main period. And then we flew up to, I think it was 4.2, and then rode up to the highest day, which was 4,500 meters or something like that. And that was really fun. It was like just a really good trip.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Almost seems like a blur. It was like only 6 months ago, but there's been so much other jam-packed action in there since as well. It was like, that's what I do love about the filming, is like filming and taking photos and capturing these moments that you sometimes forget, like little like special things that happen during it you didn't really think much of, but then when you start editing or going back and looking at the albums, you like think, wow, that was incredible, like can't believe we saw that sunset, or we did that there, and that's kind of what makes it really, really special. And that's what I enjoy about capturing these moments and being able to share them.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever ridden in Patagonia, or if not, is it on your bucket list?
It's definitely on the bucket list. I'd love to go. I've seen like loads of videos of cool trails there. I have ridden in Chile, but not made it to Patagonia yet. I would absolutely love to go there. It'd be really, really cool to go there.
Yeah.
I know that when I was there in Chile, I raced the Enduro World Series, and the dirt there was really cool. So it's got this like anti-grip. It's kind of like sand, but it's not sand. And like in a split second, you can go from like having grip to just no grip and sort of almost losing it on the bike. So,
do you have a ranking of the dirt around the world?
Yeah, I mean, probably the best would be, I think number one in the world would probably be somewhere in Canada. We went to Retallick Lodge in the interior of British Columbia, me and a friend, just on our own kind of like holiday trip. I think that'll be 3 years ago now. And yeah, the dirt there was probably some of the best dirt I've ever ridden. It was like light and fluffy, and like up at the top it was like all slatey and gravelly, and just, I don't even know. It's like, it was so good. Just, you know, you knew that you could trust the terrain that you were in, and you could just push the bike so hard, and that was really cool.
Yeah, there's a question here about Canada actually from Mark, who bumped into you in Whistler in 2018 when Crankworks was there. Apparently you let him take a picture with his son. He still remembers that, which is really
cool.
Nice. He's asking when he's asking about Squamish, and when they go back to Canada, they're thinking about riding there. What was it like? What's it like in Squamish?
Squamish is really cool. It's like you can do loads of different things there. You can shuttle, you can pedal, and again, it's got some really, really good dirt, and it's got a massive network of trail builders. And I think the town there is becoming very passionate about mountain biking. It's sort of like growing and growing, and their trail network is now just absolutely massive. It's probably as big as Whistler, which is just up the road. And the trails there they were really fun. They were really, really fun, and it's all kind of, I think it's all community funded, like bike clubs and stuff, and they've got full-time trail builders as a result of the clubs and the sort of money that they've raised through various donations, through the committee. And yeah, it was a really, really cool scene, and it was super busy, like the car parks and stuff. But yeah, so it's like really cool. I think it'd be great if the UK could almost learn with what Canada's doing from building trails there, because they have really good involved sort of local bike clubs who are so passionate about mountain biking. And yeah, I think we could take a lot from them to actually develop trails here in the UK, and sort of, you know, even raise our trail standards here. Like, the cool thing about Scotland is that I guess we were really early to the trail development thing with like the whole 7 Stains and things, and the trail centres down south that you guys have. But you know, we've kind of like got to that level and left it, and I feel that Canada's kind of, you know, they've almost raised the bar, I think, in actually what kind of trails they have, and how like people are so like on board with mountain biking there. It seems really cool. It's like a really, really great scene.
It's kind of patchy in the UK, I guess. You have like some areas where you have really active communities of people who do go out and do trail maintenance or building new trails, and then other places where it's just like, yeah, you just like happen upon some stuff and it's like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, Dunkald's like a really great example, I think, of like, it's like got quite a cool UK scene. It's like, it's pretty small, but there's like a few core players who have like really developed the scene there and built it up. And because of that, and having like the Scottish Enduro series going there, they've built into a bit of a destination, and more people are wanting to go and ride there. And it is like a really, really good place. But yeah, we don't quite have that like Canadian side yet, where we've got like authorities like accepting that mountain biking is such a growing sport. And
I've noticed a big change with the Forestry Commission, that they've become much more like wanting mountain bikers to come and visit, because they're realizing that mountain bikers are more similar to walkers in that they really appreciate the nature around them. They're very respectful. They don't tend to leave rubbish or like wreck the trails, and they see it much more as like a form of ecotourism.
Yeah, and I think the thing as well is that they are prepared to come and support local economies and go to like cafes and enjoy what facilities are on offer. And it's definitely a great thing to have, I think. And I think that the Tweed Valley is like a great example of how the sport's growing in the UK there, and there's more trail development. There's uplift there. They're talking about putting in like a proper bike park next as well. And I think if all that can come off, then that's a huge step in the right direction for mountain biking in the UK and especially Scotland.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess with the way that everything has changed around the world now, there's going to be, I guess, like local tourism and tourism within the UK is going to become much more important, much more of a thing. Has that also changed your plans for the next year?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really see being able to like travel sort of like as I have been for the past couple of years, for the remainder of this year certainly, in a normal way in a way. And I don't really think it's right to go if it's not, I don't want it to be frowned upon. I definitely want to go if everyone's happy and behind it, then that's a whole different thing. But if it's still like a bit of a funny area or a grey area, then yeah. So I think for now, just gonna base myself out of Scotland and do some trips here. I've wanted to go to the Lake District for a while and explore some more, and the same with further up north in Scotland. And there's still plenty that I've not ticked off the bucket list here. So looks like this year might be the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, we got some ferry hopping and island hopping on your radar.
Yeah, ferry hopping, maybe even a few boats. Who knows? We did a pretty cool trip using a boat a few years ago, and we did it really early. We didn't do it really early. We did it in April, and unfortunately the weather was against us. And the day that we were meant to go, temperatures dropped right down to like -2. The snow line came in, and we never got to tick off a few paths. So that could be on the agenda for this year, I guess.
Sounds like unfinished business.
So yeah, plenty in the pipeline, plenty to plan. And I guess we've got like a little bit of extra time as well to do all of that right now.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned cafes an awful lot. How are you getting by without cafes? What are your kind of like COVID ride survival modifications that you've had to make?
I've not made too many modifications. I mean, the big thing is that you can't travel. And last year I actually bought a really good coffee machine, really good espresso machine. So if you've been following on Instagram, there's kind of been like a bi-weekly update of how latte art is going. And we're getting there. We're getting not too bad.
Do you reckon you could latte art a Komoot logo?
Well, I don't know. That could be a challenge. Not quite. I'm still like working on the feather. I've definitely ticked off the pine tree. Got pretty good at the pine tree, but the feather is now a little bit more challenging. So definitely that was like a really good investment. I definitely have no regrets now having bought that, because it's made my life way more enjoyable. And sit down every like mid-morning, have a little break from whatever I'm doing or pre-ride, and we'll have a nice coffee, and then kind of sets the day up nicely.
Yeah, nice. And what about trail snacks? What would we find in your backpack?
I think it'd be pretty basic, to be honest. It'd probably be like a random Cliff Bar, sometimes a Snickers. A Snickers is the one that if like I'm really struggling and starting to get into a bad place, have a Snickers and it just brings you back to life.
It's like the emergency jelly babies.
Yeah, it's like the real emergency. It's like it's going wrong, or you've gone too far, or you've got lost when you're having a Snickers. Like, get me home ASAP.
Yeah, you're like on fumes.
Yeah, so that'll probably be my go-to. And then if it was really bad, then it would just be like whatever I can get my hands on. I did a ride. I hadn't ridden for about, I think, 6 weeks a couple of years ago, and I went for a big ride with my mate Chris. He's pretty fit. He rides on the road as well as like mountain bike, and I've never bonked so hard. Just found a really bad place and got to the top of the trail and was like shaking, was completely out of energy, and just kind of bumbled my whole way down the trail, just struggling. And then for about 3 hours later, I was just like, had 2 duffel jackets on, was freezing cold, like basically couldn't eat enough food to get back to where I needed to be. And it was a really long 2 hours of struggle. But since then, I've not really had a bad situation at pre-ride. I've been a bit more prepared.
Yeah. What about pre-ride? When you're planning, say like you found somewhere near the house, you've looked on Komoot, it looks like there's a trail there and you're gonna ride it. Like how do you go through like checking something new before riding it for the first time?
Well, I'd start with Komoot, and then I've got like quite a group here who you'd like be able to chat to as well, and like bounce off ideas or feelers, or like, I guess a lot of it is word of mouth. And then like you're like, really, that's there? So then Komoot's like a great way to like double check and like map it up. Or if I don't know where I'm going, or like have an idea where I'm going and then I get lost, then it's a good point to add in Komoot and use that to get me back in the right direction.
Yeah.
But like I normally just start on the desktop, I think, at home, and then like plan the ride, and generally try and find like a point that I already know is like the starting point, and then go from there. And then I know that I can't get too lost.
Yeah, or you have like at least a point of reference where if it all goes badly wrong, you kind of know how to get back.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I've ever gone somewhere and not been able to get back from where I've been. I've never been in that situation, but I've definitely gone places and been like, I don't think this is where I'm meant to be going.
How do you navigate out on the trail? Do you use like a GPS, or do you just use your phone?
Just use my phone. I've used GPS in the past, but I find my phone easier. And I actually really like having a nice clean handlebar setup. That's something
better
that I'm
on the
quite
POV footage.
about, so I don't really like having anything there, so I just like having my phone and just, getting it out. I kind of also go a little bit with my head as well, so sometimes it can work both ways, and I'll be like, yeah boys, it's definitely up to the right here. Let's say, oh, sorry guys, it's just checked, it's back there, we're meant to go left. But that's only happened a few times.
Yeah, well, it's not exploring if you don't get lost.
Exactly. And I like to try and memorize the route, and but that's when you can sometimes get, cause a little bit of confusion, and then you have to double check it. But
do you have quite a good like spatial awareness for direction?
Yeah, definitely say like a really good sort of spatial and directional. I always kind of have a point, and I know where I'm going, and like if I'm not feeling right about it, I'm generally like, nah, I'm going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's really useful, especially in a forest when you can't like it's really hard to tell where you are, and you're like, did I start from over there or over there? Like, do you have like a good internal compass?
Yeah, I kind of always know like what direction we've come, or if we've kind of like wrapped yourself around the hill, then I kind of always know where we've come from, or like where we're headed, the right sort of direction.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Awesome. Oh, well, thanks so much for your time this evening, Scott. It's been awesome chatting to you and like hearing about all the places that you've ridden around the world. We've come to the end of the hour, so yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for the awesome questions in the Q&A. There's been some absolute stonkers in there. I'm just gonna try. I've lost my screen. There we go. I'm just going to share my screen. I've got a QR code if you want to scan it. Does that work? If you want to scan that QR code, you can follow Scotty's home adventures on Komoot and check out all the amazing trails. And you've got a collection up of the rides that you did in Jamaica and a few others close to home that you mentioned.
Yeah, and some of my favorite routes from sort of across Europe are on there as well. So there's definitely a few good collections there, and there's definitely, if you're looking for some inspiration, certainly in Scotland, there's definitely plenty to be had up there.
Yeah, I'm definitely got Scotland on my radar for riding once the travel is allowed.
Yeah, hopefully that won't be too much longer and we can start to have a little bit of movement and start to hit some trails again.
Yeah, although then the midges will be out. It'll be back to midge season.
Yeah, midge season and long nights, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember we went to Scotland a couple of years ago and we were still riding around like 9:30 and we're like, why is it so bright in lights?
Yeah, I think the latest I've been out to is about 11 o'clock.
Wow.
So yeah, we're pretty lucky to have that.
That is amazing.
But then obviously we have the flip side in winter where it's dark by 3.
Yeah, you got to take the rough with the smooth.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Scott, and thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much for the questions, and hope that you've enjoyed the little insight into it. And yeah, have fun riding, everyone. Be safe, be sensible.
Awesome.
We'll all be able to get out there back soon, hopefully.
Yeah, the trails are going to be in awesome condition because they're not going to have been ridden for ages.
Yeah, well groomed, hopefully.
Yeah, and like before the brambles get back.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye. See you guys.
Bye.